Yo, what's going on, guys? It's your boy. Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be ranking every single Pixar movie that released, from the original Toy Story movie to the Elio movie that is currently out in theaters. I gave myself 24 hours after seeing the movie, so I had time to digest it, and I will make sure that recency bias is not in effect. But that being said, I'm really excited to dive into this. I kind of do this every year, so I try to go back and rewatch certain movies that I haven't seen in a while. So like movies like Bug's Life, Soul, I haven't seen recently, so I purposely made sure that I've watched them in preparation for this video. So we're going to be diving through all 29 Pixar movies. We're going to be ranking them, and this is my personal opinion. I have grown up with these movies, so some of them hold special places in my heart, and I'll enjoy them a little bit more than some of these other movies. And at the end of the day, everyone is going to have their own opinions on these films, and in my opinion, Pixar is a really difficult studio to rank because they, in my opinion, have no bad movies. In my opinion, they have a couple of movies that are okay, a lot of movies that are great, and then like 4 movies that are perfect. So it really is incredibly difficult for me to rank these films. So I'm going to try my best to dive into these. But also, before I get too far into this, I do want it to be known, I am very passionate about Pixar. I literally have the Pixar lamp tattooed on my body. So this is one of my favorite videos ever to make. So if you guys love Pixar, please feel free to let me know your rankings down below. But that being said, let's dive into this, shall we? In dead last place, we have the movie Lightyear. Personally, one of the few things that I don't really like about Pixar recently is that they're trying to make a lot of spin-offs and sequels to movies that don't necessarily need spin-offs or sequels. I think that Pixar works best when they're doing their original concepts, and this movie, in my opinion, just absolutely did not need to be made, for one. And for two, I think that it completely missed the mark of what this movie was marketed as. The Lightyear film, for people who do not remember, was marketed as, hey, you know, Andy, he really wanted that Buzz Lightyear toy. He really wanted this action figure. Well, this is the movie that Andy watched that made him want this toy. So it's a movie that's supposed to take place inside of a movie as a movie, and it's supposed to be this cool sci-fi epic. And I don't know if you guys remember Toy Story 2, the sequence where they go into a toy store and they see that there's just like an entire wall of Buzz Lightyear toys. So you would think, okay, Buzz Lightyear has to be this incredible action man. Maybe he's somebody like He-Man who goes on really cool action adventures, or he's like, you know, Star Wars, something epic like that. And so you watch this movie and it's more like Interstellar. I love Interstellar. I think Interstellar is incredible. I just think that that's not what the Buzz Lightyear character was. I think that the first 10 minutes of this movie, they're trying to pull an up on you, and they're trying to be like, oh my god, get really attached to these characters and really emotionally invested, and then watch him skip through hundreds of years of his life, and it's supposed to be really emotional, but it's not. We don't have enough time to meet the characters, and for the most part, we don't fully understand why Buzz is so obsessed with this mission he needs to accomplish. And it just absolutely feels like they trusted us to get emotionally attached to these characters without actually putting effort into making these characters worth that emotional weight that they really wanted us to have. And I just think that it fails at being a cool action movie. I think that the side characters are all incredibly boring and don't really bring anything interesting or new to the table. And the twist villain at the end is incredibly predictable. I just think that this movie is one of the most underwhelming movies Pixar has done. Already in 28th place, we have the movie Turning Red, and I think that ultimately this movie probably just is not for me. Every time I talk about how I dislike this movie, I'll get a lot of comments that are like, well, you're a guy, you don't get it. And on the one hand, I understand that as a valid criticism, but on the other hand, this movie is incredibly similar to another movie that came out the same year, and in my opinion, that other movie did it better. I'm talking about Ruby Gillman and the Teenage Kraken. Both of these movies are about teenage girls who are experiencing their first periods, and they're going through puberty, and they're changing a lot, and they're going through these mood swings, and they really are having issues with their mothers. And then on top of that, they also have generational trauma, and the way that they symbolize them going through these changes is by turning into a giant monster. When in Turning Red, she turns into a giant red panda, and in Ruby Gillman, she turns into a kraken. And in my opinion, Ruby Gillman and the Teenage Kraken just does it better. For one, Ruby Gillman is a much more interesting protagonist, and the mother dynamic is a lot better. Whereas in this movie, the mother is cartoonishly evil, Mei Mei is incredibly annoying, and a lot of these jokes just feel way too childish, and I think that that's where the big disconnect for me was. Watching this movie, this was the first time I watched a Pixar movie, and I was like, oh, I'm too old to be watching this movie. And I think that on top of that, this movie also relies heavily on a lot of secondhand embarrassment, and that's just not for me. I really did not like that. Alrighty, and now in 27th, we have the movie The Good Dinosaur. In my opinion, this is where the Pixar movies really start ramping up. I think that this is an overall good movie. I just think that for the most part, when it comes to an animated dinosaur movie, it's just very middle of the road. We had obviously all the Land Before Time movies that in my opinion are just as good as this movie, so it doesn't really add anything new or interesting to this style of film. I think that the animation style is obviously beautiful. I think that the interaction between Hero and our dinosaur is very cute, but I just don't think that they do anything really that different from any other dinosaur movie ever that really makes it stand out. I think that the comedy is entertaining, and I think that it's definitely worth watching. I just can't really justify putting it any higher on this list. In 26th, we have the movie Toy Story 4. Like I had mentioned with Lightyear, I don't like Pixar doing unnecessary sequels. And to me, Toy Story 3 is the perfect conclusion of that story. And I think that overall, if you're going to make another Toy Story movie, at least justify it by being like, okay, well, Toy Story 3 is the conclusion of the Andy trilogy. Let's dive into the Bonnie character and seeing the way that the toys interact with Bonnie and how Bonnie uses these toys as she's growing up and developing as a human being. And I think that that's where the Toy Story movies are as interesting as they get. I think that showing the connection between the toy and their person is what makes that franchise. And in this movie, they completely throw that away. They're like, you know what? What if Woody goes on his own adventure by himself and he meets a bunch of antique toys and he kind of realizes that maybe his entire life, his whole wanting to serve people thing was just a wrong mindset to have. And I think that that's weird. I think that that premise for this movie isn't interesting. I think that Forky is the most annoying Pixar character in the history of ever. And I just think that overall this movie could have been significantly better had they made it the Bonnie trilogy. Instead, it just feels like a useless sequel. And 25th, we have the movie Finding Dory. This kind of also goes along the similar lines of like, this is kind of an unnecessary sequel. And I definitely think that behind the scenes stuff with Ellen DeGeneres also makes this movie retroactively a little bit worse on my rankings. But I do think that this movie is a fun time. I think that it is incredibly funny. And I like the fact that they're doing a good job of kind of fleshing out Dory's backstory a little bit. And I like some of the side characters. I do think that the aquarium characters like Hank is absolutely hilarious and adds a fun energy to this movie. I just think that this movie really goes off the rails a lot, and it kind of misses something that made the first movie incredibly special, which is like the globe-trotting elements of it. I think that we focus a lot more on Dory, obviously, because she's the one who needs to be found, and we don't get as much father-son moments with Marlin and Nemo that I would have expected out of this movie. So overall, it is a good time. I just think that it's not as great as a lot of these other Pixar movies. Because Pixar, like I mentioned, has a really high standard. I think that this movie is good. I just don't think it's top 20 good. Now in 24th, this one might be a hot take. I actually don't know what the online consensus for this movie is. I have Incredibles 2. And here's the thing I want to go ahead and say. It is genuinely just because of the disappointment factor of this movie. I think that this movie is a fun time. I think that the Screenslaver could have been an incredible villain. I love the concept of the fact that this takes place, back in the 60s. TVs were a relatively new thing, and they really were believed to be like rotting kids' brains. A lot of parents did not want their kids watching TV. And this one kind of showing some of the dangers of having too much screen time is an incredibly important message that was coming out at a really great time. And I do genuinely think that there's little aspects of this movie that make it interesting, but for the most part, I think that the final battle taking place on the boat really limited a lot of the cool usage of these characters' powers. I think that the family dynamic isn't as strong in this one as it is in the first Incredibles movie, and I think that that's really the main reason why I have it so low is in comparison to the first Incredibles movie, this one is a massive downgrade, and it almost didn't feel like it was worth the time. But that being said, I'm incredibly excited that we're getting an Incredibles 3 that can potentially kind of bring this trilogy back to its former glory. And now in 23rd, we have the original Toy Story movie. I remember seeing a post one time that growing up, you're either a Cars person or you're a Toy Story person, and I 100% was a Cars person. Personally, I was a really big fan of the Cars franchise. So the Toy Story movies, just overall, I didn't really like them that much because the big thing is you either have Lightning McQueen as your cocky, arrogant main character that you like, or you have Woody as your cocky, arrogant main character that you like. And I just never really was a huge fan of the Woody character. I do think that he grows on me a little bit as we get further into the franchise, but I think that the original Toy Story movie isn't as incredible as everybody always hypes it up to be. And I think another thing that really sucks is I'm also ranking these movies on their rewatchability, and I genuinely can't rewatch the first Toy Story movie because of how bad and painful that animation style is. And it's one of those things where it's like, as somebody who does like the live action remakes, I low-key wish that instead of focusing so much on live action remakes, we would potentially go and reanimate some of these older animated movies that don't survive the pass of time as much, because in my opinion, if they reanimated this movie, it instantly would probably jump up about 5 or 6 spots because I would be able to rewatch it a lot more. It just is painful to rewatch. A lot of the jokes don't hit the same, and in my opinion, a lot of this movie just like takes too long to get going. Now, in 22nd place, we have the movie Cars. I will say, I grew up with this movie. This was probably my favorite movie as a child, so it does hold a special place in my heart, but I would be lying if I said that this movie is not just a glorified Hallmark movie. The trope of, oh, well, this big hot shot ends up in a small town and then ends up finding love and a new sense of purpose. I like Cars, but it is obviously one of the most generic stories, but I think that it will always be incredible to me watching the story of Lightning McQueen, this super over-the-top cocky, arrogant guy, and just the final sequence where he decides to push King, oh man, I'm blanking on his name right now. It's like Carl Weathers or something like that. But number 43, he pushes him across the finish line because he thinks that he deserves to finish his last race, is such an incredibly emotional sequence. I think that the relationship between him and Sally is cute, and I love Tow Mater. I think that Tow Mater is probably one of the best secondary characters that they have. I think that his sense of humor is absolutely fantastic, and I love that they just kind of let Larry the Cable Guy do what he wanted with this character. I love also hearing a lot of the behind-the-scenes stuff with Larry the Cable Guy. He absolutely loves the opportunities that Disney gave him with this, because it was supposed to be a really, really small role, but they loved him so much that they were like, you can do more. You can do more. And I love it. I'm so glad that they decided to do that. In 21st, we have the movie The Bug's Life. I actually did recently... In 21st, we have the movie A Bug's Life. This one has actually moved up a lot in my rankings versus the last couple of times I've ranked all the Pixar movies. Still, I have a hard time with this animation style. This is another one where it's like, please, you should do like a Disney Plus exclusive and reanimate some of their older animated movies so that they're like remastered almost, and kind of make that like a Disney Plus exclusive thing. Disney, I'm giving you free pointers, do it. But for the most part, I still think that the story of this movie is incredible, but part of the reason why I still have it as low as I do is because I rewatched this movie earlier this month because I was like, oh, Elio's coming out. I should rewatch some of these movies that I haven't seen in a while. So I rewatched this movie and I rewatched the movie Soul, and in my opinion, I watched it 3 weeks ago, and I still can't remember a lot of the main key points that happened in this movie. I like the overall story of ants being powerful, and it just takes one person standing up and being brave against the evil tyrants of this film to kind of like start a movement, and kind of the importance of just be loud, be outspoken, and stand up for what you believe in. I think that there's some great messages in here. I just think that overall, this film is not very memorable. I think that once again, similarly to, in my opinion, the first Toy Story movie takes a long time to get to the point. This film, in my opinion, the first like 30 minutes kind of feels like it could be like a cartoon animated short with, you know, Flint just going to the circus and kind of recruiting these bugs that really just want to like prove themselves and fit in a little bit. And then the end of this movie could be its own beautiful story. And so it kind of feels like two parts to an interesting story that, in my opinion, doesn't flow super well. So I do like Bug's Life. I just think that since I am younger, the animation style really does dock at points. If this one was remastered, I probably would like a little bit more. I just think that it's not as special as some of these other movies that are coming up. And now in 20th place, this is kind of insane to me that I just have this at number 20. We have the movie Up. Obviously, the first 10 minutes of Up is some of the most iconic sequences from all of Pixar. The scenes with Carl and Ellie and them quickly falling in love, that is insanely emotional. And when a lot of people think about like Pixar moments, that is one of the main moments they think about, and I absolutely love that. And I think that this movie has an incredible message. Oh, I forgot to show this. By the way, this is number 20 on my list. I have this movie tattooed on my arm. I do love the message of this movie. You're never too late to chase your dreams and to go on some beautiful adventures. And I think that this movie is just incredibly captivating. The villains, very intimidating, absolutely terrifying, very scary. But with some of these other movies, I think that it just ultimately is relatively forgettable. I think that Carl and Russell's like interaction and friendship is very cool, but it is one of those things where it's just like a lot of this movie is a blur to me. And I watch this movie probably at least once a year, and it's just everything in the middle isn't that memorable. And after the first 10 minutes start as strong as it does, the rest of the film just kind of doesn't live up. In 19th, we have the movie Cars 2, and hear me out. I have had this hot take for the longest time, and I will probably die on this hill. If Cars 2 wasn't called Cars 2, I think that we collectively would agree that it is an incredible movie. Because if they had marketed this movie as like Cars International or something kind of more like a spin-off adjacent type thing, I think that we probably would have liked it more. Or like at this time, they were doing the Tow Mater Tall Tales. If they were to advertise this as like a Mater's Tall Tales movie, once again, I think people would have loved it. I think that this is the most unique out of all of the Pixar movies. This might be a hot take. It's the only one that's like a blockbuster. It's a spy espionage story with a villain that is actually insanely thought out. They use a billionaire corporation that is a big monopoly. They use their propaganda to try to make their competition look really good so that they can topple their competition and make it where everybody has to run back to oil. Are you kidding me? That is an insane economic scheme in this movie. It is so incredibly well thought out. The plot twist of the villain being who the villain is remarkable. And just from start to finish, this movie has so much exhilarating moments. I think that the spycraft elements of it are fantastic. If you're somebody who's still just a big fan of the racing and want to see the racing, you get at least 2 really great race sequences where you get to see American race cars versus F1 cars. And obviously, F1 cars would absolutely smoke NASCARs. We're not going to dive into that debate right now. But I like that we get to see the racing dynamic of it, the spycraft dynamic of it, the friendship between Lightning McQueen and Tow Mater, and how Tow Mater is somebody who's not really like looked upon very, like, they don't think he's smart, right? They think he's kind of an idiot, and he gets to prove himself in this movie, and it's great. I love it. This movie has a very, very special place in my heart, and I will probably always love this film. In 18th, we have the movie Onward. I think that this movie does an incredible job for brotherly love. I think that these two characters going on this little action adventure together is fantastic. The story of them wanting to reunite with their father is beautiful. This one sequence at the end of the movie where he gets to meet his father is very, very awesome. And just overall, there's just a whole lot of fun with this movie. Like the sequences where they're having to like lie with the cops get very, very intense. And there's just a lot of little moments like that throughout it. And I like the concept of this being a very magical world where people don't really care about magic as much. They've kind of like lost their sparkle. They don't think that it's that interesting because, well, in a world where everybody has magic, is it really magical? Who knows? Who's to say? I love this film. I think it's great. In 17th, I know that this was one that is probably going to be a little bit higher on a lot of other people's list. We have the movie Soul, but part of the reason why I don't necessarily have this movie that high is still, this is one of the first times ever that the online discourse for a movie hit me before I watched the movie, and it kind of made it where my expectations were way too high. A lot of people were talking about this movie being absolutely life-changing and it being something that is absolutely captivating and it's going to leave you stunned and like questioning the meaning of life. And I do think it's a great movie, but I don't think it's doing all that. I think that for the most part, it does a really good job of showcasing humanity and what makes humans human. I think that a lot of the stuff with like your soul and you believing that you have a specific purpose, and Joe really believing that his purpose is music and that he really likes the fact that he's able to share the beauty of music with other people is very captivating. I think that it's very beautiful, and I like the fact that like the people who live in like the astral plane or like the soul world kind of like scoff at him, being like, you think that people are meant to have purpose, you people and your silly purpose, but like us having a purpose is what makes us human. And it's beautiful. I really like this film. I do think that this film is kind of underrated in the grand scheme of things, but when it comes to Pixar, I think that there are other Pixar movies that are just a little bit better. In 16th, this one is also incredibly special. We have the movie Brave. I absolutely love this movie. A really interesting twist on kind of the princess genre that is what Disney is most known for. I love the sequence with her being like, and I will shoot for my own hand. I can't do an accent. That was really bad. Also, I'm a sucker for a really good villain, and I'm a sucker for really good folklore, and they do an incredible job with like bringing in the magical elements of this film, and there being like curses and witchcraft and all the stuff with like people being turned into bears. It's very fascinating. The bond between the mother and daughter, I think, is significantly better here than in movies like Turning Red, and that's part of the reason why I have Turning Red so low, is because there's multiple movies that deal with that kind of dynamic, and in my opinion, this one does it so much better. There's a mother and daughter with this massive understanding, and they are able to communicate without words and really work together to like create this new bond, and I love it. I think it's just absolutely beautiful. I think that Mordo is absolutely goddamn terrifying, and the three little brothers are absolutely hilarious throughout this movie as well. And 15th, I think this might overall be probably the most beautiful Pixar movie. We have the movie WALL-E. I think that the way that they try to make this movie kind of like a silent film for the first 45 minutes is very captivating, and the way that they kind of show kind of a future of what America is probably going to be turning this world into is very, very interesting. And I like the fact that they kind of show that, like, hey, we need to take care of this world. This is the only earth we have, and we really need to be growing plants, gardens. We need to be being active as much as possible. And I like the fact that this is kind of like a cautionary tale on the one hand, and then on top of that, I love the story of Wally being this little trash robot who understands more than the actual people the importance of growing these plants and trying to save the world that they have kind of destroyed a little bit. And the love story between Wally and Eve is also just, that's beautiful. That is peak Pixar right there. Okay, and in 14th, this is where we have the newcomer Elio. Personally, I'm an absolutely huge fan of this movie. I'm going to do a spoiler-free kind of talking about this movie right now. So for anybody who hasn't seen it, don't worry, you can see this bit. I think that Elio is just an incredible story about the cosmos, and they turn the scientific question of, are we alone, like, amongst the stars with are there aliens out there? Are we the only living creatures in the entire universe? And the way that they're able to kind of reflect that onto Elio, who's somebody who doesn't really have a lot of friends. He doesn't fit in. He's somebody who doesn't necessarily feel loved by his family all the time. And he really is just like, you know what? If I get abducted, the aliens are going to want me, because they wouldn't abduct somebody they didn't want. So he really just wants to feel wanted. And the way that he gets exactly what he wants and then kind of discovers that in reality he was kind of just taking the other things for granted is beautiful. I like that he gets to have some conversations with his best friend Glorden about just different family things, and there's a lot of sequences in this movie where they kind of have heart-to-heart moments, and it does get extremely emotional, and I cried during this movie. I think it is absolutely beautiful, and I really love how deep this movie was able to get. I constantly fear that kids movies aren't handling as much dark topics in here, and I think this movie does deal with a couple of really dark topics, and they handle it very well. In 13th, we have the movie Cars 3. This might be a lot of personal bias because, like I said, Cars was my franchise growing up, but this movie absolutely made me cry. And I think that overall the story of Lightning McQueen is tied up really well here. I think that his overall character arc is finished very nicely, with him always trying to get better and better and better. And he just really wants to be the best because that's all he's ever really known. And here he kind of realizes that, like, maybe his time is up, but now it's time for him to pass the mantle on to somebody else. I think that his relationship with Cruz in this movie is absolutely fantastic, and I just love the overall adventure side of this movie. There are two racers who are trying to adapt to the new age of, like, well, now we have this training facility where we have these treadmills and we have this thing and we have that thing, and then Lightning McQueen being like, we're going to go to a dirt road. We have to go to a dirt road right now. We're going to practice on a dirt road. And it's awesome. I love some of the, like, hijinks that they get into with this film, with them going to the, like, demolition derby and stuff like that. I just think that it's a really great time. And just the final sequence of him realizing he's not supposed to be the one driving in this race, and he lets Ramirez Cruz finish the race. It's fantastic. I love it. And I also think Jackson Storm, very underrated villain. He is incredibly menacing. Now in 12th place, we have the movie Toy Story 2. This one also insanely emotional. I think that the soundtrack for this one is one of the best. The backstory with Jessie is incredibly emotional. And I just think that this movie does a really good job of kind of showcasing the importance of toys when it comes to the people that they're with. I think that the way that Andy cares for his toys in this movie is very incredible. And I think that it really does a good job of, when you make a sequel, there's two things you can focus on. You could either go big or you can go deeper. And I think that they did kind of a combination of both with it. The traveling sequences, the toys going out to find Woody, the stuff with Woody getting taken by a collector who's, like, absolutely taking care of him and is, like, actually kind of, like, horrifying. There's a lot of, like, very terrifying moments in this sequence. And I just think that there's overall a lot of great character moments for each of these. Like, some of the side characters, like Buzz Lightyear, gets a lot to do in this film, and I love it. I think this movie is very entertaining, and I love the way that they open this sequence, because part of what makes Toy Story as interesting is the fact that these are, at the end of the day, toys, and a theory as to what brings them to life is how much they are loved by their kid. So getting to see the sequences from, like, Andy's perspective of what these toys are doing is really cool. In 11th place, we have the movie Luca. I think that this movie is absolutely beautiful. I think that the coming-of-age nature of it obviously is going to put it a lot higher on my list. Coming-of-age movies are my favorite kinds of movies, and I just think that overall the friendship between Luca and Bruno is very interesting. I think that, for the most part, he's scared of the water creature coming out, and he meets somebody who's a lot more laid back, and he's like, you know what, yeah, maybe I can be a little bit more comfortable in my own skin. And they decide to sign up for a triathlon, which, how do they think that was going to work? There's definitely a solid chance of them potentially getting wet and revealing that they're a sea monster. But either way, I love just overall the story with them kind of like being forbidden in this area and them having to kind of like hide who they actually are. And then eventually by the end of the movie being able to embrace themselves as the sea creatures that they are, because they're not monsters. They've just only been seen as monsters. I think it's a great allegory. So I really like it. I think it's solid. And with the coming of age story and like the two friendships kind of having their falling out and then being able to rekindle that friendship, I think it's great. In 10th place, we have the movie Inside Out. I think that this is a movie where the concept is so bold and so interesting, and there's so much you could potentially do with it, that it actually risks making this movie potentially not be as good of a movie. But Pixar is able to pull it off and balance everything incredibly well. I think that the stuff with Riley moving and it kind of creating a lot of these mood swings is very interesting. And I like the fact that this overall story is that you shouldn't really suppress any of your emotions, because at the end of the day, sometimes you need to feel that sadness so that the happy moments can shine, and so on and so forth. And I just love the way that this movie takes you on an adventure throughout the mind. And I personally think it is one of the most interesting worlds that any of these movies takes place in. And I do kind of wish, like Disney, if you're doing anything new with some of the Disney parks, add in like a Inside Out section that like is like inside the brain, like stuff with like the train of thoughts and stuff. I don't know, I think that it could be really cool. I definitely think that Disney is kind of underutilizing this property right now, but I think it's really interesting. I love the character dynamics with one another, and I think that the jokes for this movie also land incredibly well. In 9th place, we have Toy Story 3, and I have to say, I'm not a big fan of the Toy Story franchise, but to say that this movie is not incredible is just absolutely incorrect. I think that Lotso the Bear, phenomenal villain, so good, insanely cool. The stuff with them having to do like a prison break escape sequence in this movie, absolutely fantastic. And I also just love the fact that Andy going to college and then being like, you know what, I love these toys, I've cherished them my entire life, but you know what, I could give them on to somebody better, is a really cool message, because sometimes in life you're going to outgrow certain things, and it's better to let somebody else enjoy it than to kind of like leave it in a storage box somewhere in a closet where it's never going to be seen again. So overall, I do really like this movie. I think that it is insanely emotional, and I've seen a video clip of somebody who like edited the movie so it ends when they're all holding hands and going into the incinerator, and like they pretended that that's where it ended, and they started rolling the credits, and they showed that to somebody, and that's hilarious. That is actually evil and diabolical, and I love that. This movie's incredibly emotional. Also, another thing I did not mention, Barbie in this movie is so ahead of her time, because the whole stuff with like Ken being very toxic and Barbie being too good for him is like feminism 101, and they absolutely nail it in this movie. I think it is incredibly good. And now in 8th place, we have the movie Finding Nemo. I think that this movie is just an absolute classic, and just the overall love that this father has for his child, that he will literally go to the end of the world to find them, is incredible. I think that Dory is absolutely hilarious in this movie. That's probably like one of the best like duos that we have in any of these Pixar movies, between Marlin and Dory. I think that the stuff with Nemo entering the fish tank and them kind of like indoctrinating him into their group is very interesting. I think that that's a lot of fun. And for the most part, this adventure film is just absolutely fantastic. They go through so many different parts of the ocean. The animation style is beautiful. The sequences with the shark, it gets scary, it gets intense. And for the most part, this is just like a tried and trusted action adventure movie that almost, yeah, maybe this is crazy to say, but almost feels like an Indiana Jones type movie at some points. And I just really think that they nail the adventure side of this. Now in 7th place, we have the movie Monsters, Inc. I think that this movie also has a lot of those like Pixar moments that I had mentioned with Up, where it's like stuff with Sully protecting Boo for the first time and kind of like realizing that like, oh my god, these children aren't so bad. I think that that's awesome. I love just the entire, once again, the world building here is absolutely phenomenal. I love everything that they do with the doors. I'm excited that they're making that a ride. It's going to be incredibly sick. I'm so excited about it. And I think that overall, this movie has a lot of great laughs in the film. I think that it does a really interesting job of showcasing that like sometimes we're wrong about things and that we need to be able to learn and grow. I think that the bad guy in this movie, I'm blanking on his name right now, it's like Mr. Watterson or something like that. he is terrifying. Hey, he's really scary. And I also think it does a really good job of kind of showcasing corporate greed in an interesting way, because everybody kind of just blindly believes that like the people are the bad guys because that's what they've always been told, and they never actually really tried to discover if people actually are bad. And I think that that's kind of an interesting thing. So overall, I really like this movie. I think there's a really fun dynamic, and I think that there's a lot of just incredibly iconic stuff from this movie, like the "get that thing back to where it came from," or "so help me, so help me." It's iconic. I love it. Coming in sixth place, last year when I ranked this pretty high, people were like, "Oh, that's definitely recency bias." I've rewatched this movie about 12 times, and I get ready to cry almost every single time. We have the movie Elemental. It's so good. It's so good. For one, the best love story that Pixar has ever done, period, point blank, end of discussion. I love the fact that they make the water people very emotional and like want to cry a lot. I think that that's hilarious. The fire people being people that have like, they're hot-headed and they have really bad tempers, also really iconic. I just love the fact that like overall Ember just really wants to make her family proud. Her parents sacrificed so much to move to this city for her, and she really doesn't want to let them down, and she really stresses herself out with working at this, you know, fire bakery thing. I don't know exactly what it is. It's basically like, you know, just their parents' shop. And she gets so stressed out with like wanting to do that and taking care of her parents that she kind of gets caught up in doing that she never really realizes what she personally actually wants to do with her life. And she eventually meets Wade, and Wade helps her step out of her comfort zone, kind of discover certain things about herself that she didn't really know, like the fact that she loves art. And I just absolutely love the fact that this movie uses two people who are opposites interacting with each other to help them embrace the best parts of themselves. It also does a lot with family tradition, and I just absolutely love the animation style of this movie. I know that it had to have been really difficult to animate the flames throughout this entire film, so that also just absolutely stunning. And also the music for this movie, once again, incredible soundtrack. I really, really enjoyed this movie from start to finish. I think that the jokes land, the elemental puns all throughout are just so good. And like I said, just incredible love story. In fifth place, we have Inside Out 2. I think, once again, this movie does, in my opinion, when I first watched the original Inside Out movie, I was a little disappointed. And I will admit, I still to this day don't think that they really used the concept to the best of their abilities. But this film absolutely got it. Having too much emotions as a teenager is definitely a thing that happens. We get way too insecure, which kind of comes up with embarrassment. We get, you know, jealous a lot, which happens with ennui. And for the most part, I just like the fact that they're really like branching out and introducing a lot of new emotions. And I like the fact that they use the concept of suppressed emotions and how if you bottle up your emotions, eventually there's going to explode and you're kind of going to have an outburst. And the way that they depict an anxiety attack in this movie is incredible. Once again, we're venturing through the mind, and there's a lot of really fun sequences. I love the like imaginary boyfriend kind of jokes in here, and there's just like a lot of little moments like that that are just absolutely hilarious. And I think that this movie is probably, in my opinion, a top 2 funniest movies that Pixar has ever done, and that also definitely helps with it. And then on top of that, Riley's a great protagonist, and I think as well as it being better than the first movie because it like has more emotions and it fleshes out the mind as well, I think that we also get a lot more of Riley's story in this, and they do a really good job of balancing Riley's story with what's going on inside her brain. In fourth place, we have Monsters University. I think that this prequel is absolutely phenomenal. I think that for the most part, this Alrighty, and in fourth place, we have Monsters University. Personally, I think that this is the funniest movie that Pixar's ever done. I think that just from start to finish, it's absolutely hilarious. I think that they get the college vibes really iconic, right? Like, I want to say that it's realistic. I've never actually been to college, but it reminds me a lot of movies like Pitch Perfect, which are some of my favorite movies. And I just think that, like, overall, college is, like, a very underutilized thing in movies. Like, they really need to do it more often. I feel like it's very entertaining, and it leads to a lot of hilarious bits. Like, this movie is absolutely hilarious, and I love it to death. And I think that the scare game's incredibly cool. It's a very epic thing. And I like the whole like team of ragtag misfits who really just want to kind of prove themselves, and them getting that opportunity. I think that it does a great job of showcasing that Mike is an absolute genius. And I also think that there's an incredibly emotional sequence here with him discovering that something he has worked for his entire life he just can't have. And the sequence where him and Sully are talking out by the lake about like family legacy and how for Sully, everything has always came really easy to him, and he's just terrified of making his family look bad. And being a Sullivan to everybody else always has kind of seemed like such a good thing. Like, oh my God, you're from this family, isn't that awesome? He just wants to be himself, and it's really hard for him to constantly feel like he needs to fill somebody else's shoes. And I just think that that sequence is so insanely emotional that it once again is a scene that has made me cry. And it's just that scene is what Pixar is to me. If anybody's ever like, hey, why do you love Pixar so much? That's one of the main scenes I will show them, because it's just incredibly emotional, it's incredibly human, and it's something that just like showcases something that we can all relate to, which is the fear of letting people down and the fear of not being able to live up to the expectations of people. And it's just very interesting, because when we meet Sully in the original Monsters Inc., he's somebody who has so much confidence. He's somebody who is the best at what he does. And seeing this version of him before he gets to that point is just truly inspirational. I love it. And in third place, like I mentioned earlier, I think that there's like 4 or 5 perfect Pixar movies. I think that my top 5, you could have really switched them around, but I have the movie Coco. I think that this movie is the only like true musical that Pixar has done. And I think that this movie has some of the best plot twists in the history of plot twist ever. It is absolutely incredible. I'm not even going to spoil it, because some of you guys need to go watch this movie again, because as somebody who, like, I watched this movie for the first time 3 years ago and I watched it again recently, it still hits. It's so good. It's awesome. I absolutely love it. And I think that this movie just is so culturally rich. I think that the animation style is absolutely beautiful. And overall, the journey with Hector and Miguel is just incredibly interesting. The way that they depict the afterlife is beautiful. The scene of the person being like completely forgotten forever is heartbreaking. Yeah, that's heartbreaking. Hey, that really broke my heart. And I think that this movie just does a really good job of showcasing the importance and the beauty of family, and constantly wanting to connect with one another and being there for your family when they need you the most. Now, in second place, I have the movie Ratatouille. This one is just like a personal preference for me. I personally love cooking. I cook as often as I possibly can. I love seasonings. I like trying new recipes. I like doing different things to kind of switch up and go, different from the norm. And I do definitely think that Ratatouille is a big part of the reason why I do this. The sequence where he gets the cheese and he gets the strawberry and he like zaps them together and then he smells it and he just like... that scene sticks in my brain forever. The little fireworks and everything, it's beautiful. I love it. And one of my favorite things about this movie is, for one, the message. Anybody can cook. Never let anybody stop you from doing something that you are passionate about. And Remy in this movie is told almost 20 times, hey, you probably shouldn't be in the kitchen. You're going to get yourself killed. Hey, stop doing this thing that you really love. It's not worth it. You should just be like the rest of us. And Remy is just so passionate about cooking and so sure that this is what he wants to be doing that he is genuinely willing to die to cook. It's something that he's willing to risk his life on. And I think that that is incredibly interesting. I also think that this is one of the funniest Pixar movies. I think that the stuff with the villain kind of going crazy because he's like, there are rats in my kitchen, is great. I think that he's fantastic in this. I think that for the most part, the love story between Alfredo and, I'm blanking on the girl's name right now, but the badass female chef, adorable. I love it. What a cute love story. And overall, I think once again, the animation is beautiful. I just really, really enjoy this. And the score, 10 out of 10. But now in first place, without a doubt, as somebody who is a superhero fan, I gotta give it to Incredibles. For one, I would argue this is a top 5 superhero movie of all time. For two, I would argue this is the top 5 animated movie of all time. I think that the way that they're able to connect these superheroes' powers with their family, ties, for the most part, the man of the house has to be strong, has to be capable. You got Mr. Incredible with super strength. The mother of a family needs to be very flexible because she needs to, cook and clean and take care of all of the children and make sure that she's kind of the glue that holds everybody together. So she has elastic powers. We have a little boy who is all over the place and he's constantly just rambling and his mind is going like a mile a minute. So he has super speed. You have a teenage girl who kind of sometimes feels neglected and invisible and she gets very defensive. So she has force fields and invisibility. Are you kidding me? Those are just incredible powers that tie into the characters incredibly well. And you have some of the deeper and literally the deepest things that we deal with in any of these Pixar movies, like how insurance companies are evil and they're kind of, scamming old people out of money and they're really screwing people over. And Bob takes this job, and he's finding a different way to be a hero by helping people find loopholes in these insurance companies. And then we have the fact that he's really longing to be a superhero, even though they're outlawed. We have the sequence where the guy tries to kill himself, and then a superhero saves him, and then they have to deal with the ramifications of that. And all these incredible things that I've mentioned, and I haven't even gotten to the greatest villain in the history of cinema. Are you kidding me? Syndrome does a genocide. He kills so many superheroes, and you kind of can come to realize, like, the more you analyze the island that they're on, that he was getting ready to kill Frozone. They were going to get Frozone, and they were going to murder him next, but they happened to find Mr. Incredible, and the only reason why Frozone probably did not die on that island is because he happened to be with Mr. Incredible, and Mr. Incredible got taken instead of him. But just overall, this movie has some incredible action set pieces. The family dynamic in here is the absolute best, and I still to this day think that they have the best speedster sequences in any movie or TV show ever. Dash just being too fast for the camera is such an incredible touch and such an incredible flair that I absolutely love. And one of my favorite things about this movie is after, like, the final battle is said and done and we think that everything is okay, they sprint back to their house because they realize their child is in danger, and they walk into their house and Syndrome is there with Jack Jack. And that might be one of the most terrifying things that has ever happened in a Pixar movie. It is so menacing. It is so scary. And then Syndrome flies away, and we get, obviously, the most iconic sequence with Jack Jack unleashing all of his powers on Syndrome, and Syndrome eventually being defeated. But man, oh man, is that movie just from start to finish exhilarating. I love this movie to death. I think that the 60s vibe is absolutely phenomenal. And just overall, it's a great movie. It's an incredible movie. You see what I did there? You see what I did there? Anyways, but yeah, so overall, I really enjoy Pixar. I love all of these movies. You could definitely convince me that any Pixar movie is a top 10 Pixar movie, and I literally won't disagree with you because they all have their own special moments, and they have different things that'll connect with different people. So obviously, this list was just my list. If you are still here, please feel free to let me know your list down below, and I love and appreciate you guys so much for coming by and checking it out. If you liked it, feel free to like and subscribe. I'm really close to 1,000 subscribers. It'd be really cool and dandy if I could hit that. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and sign out now. Hopefully, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out. Bow. Bow. Bow.